Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
All right.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with an old and good friend, Alex Plexis, former Stampdede Wrestling alumni, former Dungeon alumni, out on the West Coast now, setting the world on fire. Alex, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's it's been a while for you and I. We recently reconnected on Facebook, and you're one guy I was wondering. Okay, I knew you moved away. I knew kind of about the same time that Randy Myers moved away. You went to the West Coast too, but I kind of stopped. I kind of lost track to you after a while. After you weren't as busy with ECCW there.
Yeah, no. Randy and I actually, I moved a month earlier, found a place, and then Randy and Andy Bird both moved out. We all lived together in Burnaby here.
Okay.
While we were working for ECCW.
Nice, good for you guys. So you guys are obviously still tight today, then.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, Andy Bird just left my place earlier today. He's got a son now who's the same age as one of my daughters, and so we get the kids together all the time. And
oh man, it's wild to me because I mean, I was always kind of the old man in the locker room, and now to see, all you guys that were sort of young teenager kids breaking in when I was kind of thinking, geez, maybe I better pack it in. And now you have kids of your own. It's really wild for me to see.
Yeah, well, it's weird for me too, especially when I get into these conversations. I still relate so much to back then and to
right.
the dynamic between people. It's funny to be sitting here talking to you about my kids. I can still remember sitting front row at the Ogden Legion of Doom watching you and TJ go at it.
Oh man. Well, and it's so funny because we would have met each other at a time for you when kids weren't even a consideration. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You guys were fucking babies. Like,
yeah, I know. I think for me anyway, my first match was 3 months after my 15th birthday.
Wow.
For Chucky.
Holy whistling. And that, so sorry, did you just say you trained with Chucky?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
okay. Who did you break in with at Stampede? Because you came in, like I say, I knew you guys all came out of BJ's, but I wasn't sure who the trainer was then. Yeah,
well, it was a funny place. BJ's was really cool. It was one of those things you hear people talk about where like you're a part of something really special and you never know it when it's happening.
Right.
That was definitely one of those places.
Yeah.
Because at one time, so when I landed in Calgary, I moved from Toronto, came to Calgary, saw a billboard for Stampede Wrestling, started coming out to the shows, and there was one other kid my age who was sitting front row. He seemed to kind of have a little bit of rapport with the wrestlers that I kind of was a little jealous of and wanted to have, and so I buddied up to what turned out to be God's gift to wrestling, Michael Richard Blake.
Oh, okay, okay.
I need to be careful not to go too hard on the Chucky.
You know what? I still struggle with it too, man.
Yeah. But so we kind of made friends, and I chatted with him, and he was training at the time with Randy over at BJ's gym. And so
right.
He got me all hooked up with that. I started training with them. And then Brandon Van Danielson came and joined us a couple of months later. And then once we kind of built up some fundamentals and our basics were there to the point that we could benefit from training from someone like TJ, then he came in and he started running training with us as well.
Okay.
And so we had Randy in there, we had TJ in there, and then I mean you remember the way things
yeah,
were.
man, it was a little bit of everything down there.
There's Natty was there a lot of the time. Harry was in and out. APOC was in and out.
Yeah, Teddy'd probably pop in and out of there.
Oh, for sure. He lived the other side of the wall, so you never knew when Ted was going to turn up. That was always fun.
Well, one thing, as much as people want to say about Ted, good, bad, or indifferent, that kid has a mind for wrestling. It's unbelievable. So the fact that you got to spend some time training under him, I mean, he is an unfucking believable worker. Like some of his stuff gets lost in some of the bullshit you hear. That kid is one of the most talented people I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely.
He's like a mad scientist. Like he'd pop up and you just see the gears turning in his head, and then can I try something with you? And pull you in and pull up these crazy things that he just pulls out of thin air. I see guys still who are like, oh, I want to show you this new move that I invented. I'm like, yeah, Ted did that in like 2006.
Yeah. Yeah, man. He and him and Jack Evans for that matter. And definitely you could put Michael Richard Blaze and TJ in that category too, where, I got to a point where I was wrestling and people were kind of saying like, oh, Jordy, you're one of the best and blah, blah, blah. And then you start working with those guys and realize like, no, I'm kind of dog shit actually. Like these guys are unbelievable.
With guys like TJ and Ted and Mike. And yeah, I think it's easy enough to catch Mike saying it now. There are levels to this.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. It's like an onion. It's like an onion. There's layers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so were you one of those guys, and this is always of interest to me. I don't care how many times you've been asked this question, because I bet it's 1,000, but are you one of those guys that grew up loving wrestling and always wanted to be a wrestler? Is that kind of how you got into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it when I was a kid. Without getting too much into any sob story or anything, I didn't have a lot of male influences in my life, so it was definitely something like I think that led me to gravitate toward wrestling and these superheroes.
Gotcha.
And, yeah, I loved it when I was a kid, and then when I was about, I had to have been 8 or 9 years old. Me and my friends were sitting around, and my mom happened to be bringing in snacks for us right as The Rock told Triple H that he was going to take his pointy little nose, shine it up real nice, and so on and so forth. And, I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling for a while.
Perfect timing, eh?
I always joke that it got pent up. Like if I'd have been able to watch wrestling, then I'd just be another wrestling fan. But I had to make up some time, so here I am.
Yeah, so really, I mean, what your mom thought she was doing you a favor, she really might have really hurt her own feelings at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think she did me a favor, but I don't think she intended to.
Well, and I mean, sometimes those forbidden fruits are the ones you want the most, right? Like a lot of times that, telling somebody not to do something is the fastest way to get them to do that.
Yeah, I remember hiding out in my basement and I'd figure out which of the channels above or below Raw was the most plausible one that I could have been watching if somebody walked in, and I just sit there with the remote.
That's hilarious. I remember my mom would let us watch it when I was a kid, but I mean, because we never, wrestling wasn't what it was when you were watching The Rock and Triple H, first of all.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a different.
Yeah, for sure. And we didn't have WWE. We only had Stampede Wrestling. So, of course, my mom, living in Calgary for a really, really long time, knew a lot of people that would see the boys out for dinner after the shows or whatever. So, literally, man, I was probably about 7 or 8 years old watching wrestling when my mom smartened me up. Like that's fake, that's phony wrestling. It's not real. It's fixed. You know what I mean? Like she really kind of let us know real quick that wasn't necessarily what we were watching, but she let us watch it. And then we'd start getting rowdy and want to fight. And then she wouldn't even stop us. She'd just say, go outside.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. She was pretty good that way. Didn't want us busting up the house.
Yeah.
So now fast forward, you get to work you're working at Stampede Wrestling. And then, how much did you work at PWA? Like, was I still at PWA when you went there?
Yeah. So I started working in PWA when they first debuted in Calgary.
Okay.
Up until that point, I hadn't really done anything with them. I'd come up to the shows and try and weasel my way in, but I hadn't really gotten anywhere.
Wow, that's pretty smart. Always bring your gear, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they started coming down to Calgary, I started working for them more. So it was I'd been around for a few years by the time I got to PWA.
Right. And that was, I mean, that to me was one of the harder rosters to crack, because it seemed to always have the best guys from Calgary and the best guys from Edmonton. So if you're a young guy breaking in, that was a tough place to get in. Absolutely.
And that was the goal for us. That was the other reason you'd go up, because the work rate was so good. The guys were so much fun to watch. And it's like, so yeah, I'll come up, bring my gear, talk to Kurt, see what I can do. But if I can't get on the show, it's hardly a waste of a weekend. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's the thing. They were always fun shows. And there was a time there, PWA for what had a really, really good roster, but for an independent show with no, kind of no names being brought in and things like that, was drawn really, really well back then. For the first stretch that we were running in Calgary at the Acadia Sportsplex there, I think we were selling it out every month. Is that right? Hey, quite a while. Yeah, and I mean we weren't selling out, but I remember a time drawn, between 500 and 700 at Nate, kind of every month with, obviously with Harry and TJ, it's not that hard.
Right. But none of us had big names back then. Like it was, but I think in fairness too, I don't want to say like, oh, the promotions today aren't drawing the same because we were so much of a better roster. Wrestling was at such a high then. It wasn't, it was a different thing.
For sure.
Yeah. Like when you started with, like you say, when you were watching The Rock and Triple H, that was the zenith, right? Like that was when shit was just blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah. When everybody was.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the time. And if anyone wants to fact check me on this, feel free. But I was told at that time, kind of, Steve Austin at his peak was selling 3,000 t-shirts a night.
Wow.
Right. Like, I don't know how long that went on for. I don't know whether that was a year, 2 years, a few months. But yeah, there was a time I heard he was averaging 3,000 t-shirts a night in sales.
Wow. Oh, that's 2 weeks. That's impressive.
Right. Like like people don't understand how popular it was then. Right. Like that's the first, Hulk Hogan crossed it over, but that really made a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So now, did you get into acting out in Vancouver as well when you moved out there?
No.
And what was let's not even go that far. What was the point? Why did you decide to move? Why did you guys decide to move out there?
Winter.
Fair enough.
There was a moment. Randy and I were sitting in Randy and Dan and I. It was Dan's car. We're sitting in Dan's car. We've been in there for 20 minutes, and the thing hasn't warmed up yet.
Right.
We're in downtown Calgary on our way to training, and we said, I can't do this. This is going to be my last winter in Calgary. I won't do this anymore. And that was, I mean, that would have been winter 2010, I think. And then it was September 2011. Like, nope.
Winter's coming. We're out.
And I mean, at that point, we'd been coming out to wrestle in BC for a couple of years anyway. And the scene out here was a lot of fun. We were all really happy with the spots we'd found for ourselves out here. And so it was kind of a toss up wrestling wise. There were interesting opportunities in both places. Right. It wasn't like we had to choose one or the other.
Right.
We had kind of, because with Calgary, we'd working in Calgary, Edmonton, wherever else around there. And then ECCW would bring us out every month, except over the winter. They wouldn't make us because we drive. So they would
you bet.
in the dead of winter, but they bring us out every month. And then we kind of hoped we could get.
Oh shit.
We ended up just settling into ECCW out here.
Oh, okay. Nice. And I mean, I've always heard good things. I've never worked for ECCW. There was a time I looked at working there, and shit, what's the other promotion that was running out there at the time? All Star?
Yeah, probably All Star. They're still around.
And basically, I was already in a position with Stampede where we weren't allowed to work anywhere else, so it was kind of like I talked to both promoters, and they both said like, well, if you work here, you can't work for the other guy. It was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay home. But I understand, like, having been in their position where you're paying money to promote a guy, I appreciate their position because I've been on that promoter side where, you want to protect what you have.
For sure. It's just tough when none of it, there's so, it's not like you're doing tours and stuff like that. You guys just want to get their ring time in.
Well, and that's the thing, is nobody's paying anybody enough that we should be trying to dictate what they do with their free time. You know what I mean? If another promotion chooses to run, and if another promotion chooses to use a guy that you choose to use as well, unless you're willing to pay the guy to not make that booking or to not, somehow feed his family that night, you can't really say anything. Like, I appreciate the, I don't want you working for another promoter in the same city, but I also think the guy's got to make money, right? Like, guys are trying to eat.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it can be done just fine as long as the wrestler takes a little bit of responsibility and you make sure that you're protecting your own value.
Right.
You're still like, you're not devaluing yourself to one promoter going off and working for the other. If everybody's working together and trying to be mindful of everybody's business interests, then I think it certainly, in the way the business runs now, I think it can work just fine. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that for sure. Like, even I was talking to, I was on Big Bad Boris's podcast and we were talking about booking, and it was, there was a time when I was booking PWA and I think Bruce was booking in Stampede, and it would be hard when you'd have a guy like you that would work both promotions, and in PWA I'd have you work at babyface, and in Stampede Bruce would turn you heel, and that would make it tough, right? Because you're 3 hours up the road. A lot of the fans were the same at the shows, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was the cool thing about Alberta, is we had those diehard fans who'd make a 3-hour drive through snow and whatever else.
Yeah, there was some of those fans that are more, did more to make the shows than some of the boys and girls did.
For sure.
Yeah. It's,
yeah, I have just as fond memories of Jonathan and all those
man.
I have of a lot of the boys.
Well, actually, coming up on the podcast real soon, I'm going to be having. Do you remember David and Thomas?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, those guys. I'm going to have those guys on with Dusty Adonis on one episode.
Oh,
and, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. Like, I think those guys get so excited about wrestling, and they're some of the most diehard fans. Like, they go to every wrestling show. Whether it's Stampede, RCW, PWA, they're diehard supporters of the business.
And for since I think before I was in the business.
Yeah, I barely remember a time when they weren't at the shows. Yeah, like those guys are absolute beauty. So I'm looking forward to that one. It'll actually be really interesting. So, what are you doing with yourself now? We've gone through the wrestling stuff. What are you up to now?
Yeah, well, I'm not to veer on back to the wrestling stuff, but I'm just coming off. I've been out of the business for 4 years.
Okay.
Because I got hurt, and we can get into that if you're interested in getting.
Let's get into that. What happened?
Okay. Well, you want the long version or the short version?
Give us the long version, man. We got nothing but time.
That's good, because there's a cautionary tale in the long version that I think is good for people to hear. So,
excellent, man. Let's hear that.
I was working out in ECCW, and I was working with it was September, I think. I was working with Nicole Matthews, and I caught an elbow up under the chin, got a mild concussion, and at that point in time, that really wasn't something that I took very seriously.
Right.
Which is part of why I want to tell these stories, because I think there is a little bit of that attitude in wrestling that people don't necessarily respect the damage that we're doing to ourselves and how serious
Guilty.
that really can be.
Well, especially when you're young and you don't understand your own mortality yet. For
sure. So I got this concussion, and I didn't really take any time off, because you figure, it's independent wrestling. It's not like I'm out there every night.
Yeah, I feel fine.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your spot, and the next match is going to be a few weeks or whatever. It'll be fun. So I went right back to wrestling every 2 weeks or a month, and I felt okay. And then that March, I was in the Pacific Cup tournament for ECCW, which is a very prestigious tournament out this way. One of the things that really turned my attention to how interesting and how good the product is out here.
Right.
Was seeing the work rate on these shows. So I was competing in the Pac Cup in the first round, and I still don't actually know what it was that did it. I ended up with another concussion, and a pretty serious one that time. Me and the guy I was in there with still disagree on when it actually happened. And I've watched the tape back, and I still can't quite put my finger on it.
Is that right? See, to me, that's the scariest thing. When there's no blatant blow to the head that you can say, okay, that's when I got a concussion. That's scary to me.
That's the thing. So in retrospect, I'm able to say, well, it was that at that point I hadn't recovered properly, and it didn't take a major blow to the head to do that.
Right.
And that's the thing that I want to talk to people about, is that you really, your brain is incredible. It's incredibly elastic. It can recover from a lot of things, but you got to let it.
Yeah.
And you've got to be really serious about taking that time.
For sure.
Because I'm convinced if I had taken the appropriate time to recover, I would have been okay. But as it was like far and away the most serious concussion I'd ever had off of whatever it was that it was off of.
Well, and it might not have been anything, right? It might have been like I had a concussion, not to trample on your story, but excuse me, one of the last concussions I remember I had was actually, I took you take a little bit of a V bump and whiplash yourself. I gave myself a concussion from that. And when I seen the doctor I was talking to, he said, well, when was your last one? I said, oh, it was it was a long time. It was a few months ago. And he kind of thought that a few months wasn't a long enough time to be having this conversation again.
That's the thing. It was like, I realized when I was forced to learn about concussion recovery and all that stuff, that my idea of what was an appropriate recovery time was way out of whack.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, the minute I don't feel symptoms, I'm good. Right. Like
yeah.
that was my attitude.
Guys with the medical with the UFC is up to the point, like guys get these 6-month medical suspensions. Like you're not allowed to do contact for this.
Exactly.
And it's, you know, they throw out it like you have a fight. Well, here's your 6 months. Here's your 3 months at least. Like you start looking at that and you realize that like a small amount of time is 3 to 6 months.
Yes, a short term, you know, a guy that barely, you know, I don't want to minimize any of the damage those men are taking it or those women are taking in there. But yeah, like, I mean, you see a guy that wins a fight and he still gets 2 months, no contact.
Yeah.
You know,
and like, as he should. And
yeah, no, it's one of those things as I get older, especially the more we learn about CTE. Like I would love to see the WWE, and it's easy to say from my chair, but I'd love to see the WWE in particular give the people more time off just to rest those injuries. I mean, all those bumps rattle your brain. Like, I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the pandemic probably did a lot for the overall health of the wrestling industry, just making so many people take a step back and give themselves some time.
Well, it probably elongated a few careers for sure, right? Gave some people some time to heal up.
Yeah. So that I had that concussion. My next booking wasn't for 6 weeks after that. So same thing. I figured I didn't need to worry about anything. I just kind of, you know, it was a long gap anyway.
Right.
So the show started getting a little bit closer, and I just wasn't quite feeling right. And so I set up a couple of mattresses on my living room floor, and I did a bump and feed. I don't want to use industry terms that not everybody listening would learn, but I'm on these cushy mattresses anyway. So it's just to see what moving around. So I'm falling on my back, rolling up to my side, getting up, falling on my back again. I did that 3 times, and I was laid out for 2 hours. My vertigo was so bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Oof.
I was nauseous. Whole room was spinning. It was scary. And so I had to call and pull out of the show that I had coming up. And it was, you know, another 3 weeks after that before I had another booking coming up, and that started to get closer. And I realized that not only am I not good to wrestle, but I don't think this is getting any better.
Right.
And at that point I had gone back to university. I was doing most of my school online because I had 3. I had 3 kids, 3 of my 4 at that point. And I had to drop out of school because I couldn't handle that kind of time on a computer or even reading a textbook for that.
Is that right? Hey, just constant headaches. Yeah,
I remember trying to take it easy, and then going to my doctor and telling him I was all proud of myself. So, you know, I've hid my phone. I stayed away from the TV. I haven't watched any screens. I've just been reading. It's like, you can't read.
I'm in school. That's impossible.
He's like, yeah, that's about what you're supposed to do. Is stare at the ceiling. Oh. So I actually went. I absolutely lucked out, and I got a job with BC Parks. I was helping manage one of the campgrounds out here. So I was out in the wilderness. There was no cell reception or internet out there anyway. So like even my job responsibilities couldn't rely on a computer.
Right.
And that gave me some time to.
That's perfect.
Yeah, gave me some good time to recover. And so I took 2.5, 3 years before I even considered doing anything wrestling related.
Right.
But I just found that the itch was so bad. I mean, like I said, I started training to wrestle when I was 14. Like that, I retired when I was 27. So
that's young, man.
I said to my wife, like, I don't even know what it's like to be an adult who's not a wrestler. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
I talked to all of, you know, even through high school and university and stuff like that. All my friends are going out to parties on the weekend, and I'm going to, you know, work a show in Abbotsford or Lethbridge.
Yeah. Well, and it's a different life. Like, people don't understand that if you've never done it, and people there's fans that, you know, they read a lot about it and they watch a lot of wrestling, and they, you know, they know some of us real close, but until you're kind of traveling up and down that highway week in or night in and night out, and climbing in between those roads and hearing the roar of a crowd, no matter how small or large they are, you know, until you've done it, you don't understand. There's literally nothing that can replace that.
Yeah.
Like
It was still one of the best times of my life was when we were based out of Calgary, and there was me and Randy and Dan and Tyler Breeze, and then there'd be other people who rotated through. Like Tennille was riding with us for a while. Chucky'd sometimes come for shows, stuff like there'd always be a car of us who we for a good stretch were able to find shows every weekend, traveling from the West Coast out to Manitoba and everywhere in between, and it's just there's nothing like it.
No, and it gives you a different bond. Like there's a lot of people that I'm close with in the business, but the people I was always closest with were the people I shared the most rides with. You know what I mean? Like it's a different thing when you're. It sounds funny, but people don't realize like every time you get in that car, you're kind of taking your life in your hands. Yeah. You're not going to hit a deer. I was in a car once with, I don't know if you knew Cyborg was a guy named Andre Tricato. He was like 6'9", 320. He was a monster. And in the other front seat driving the car was a guy called Chris Anthony or Chris Lazansky, who's been on the podcast before. And he at the time was, 6'3", 285. And so I'm this little guy in the back at, 5'10", 220. And we hit a moose. And I literally in my head had time to think like, that moose ain't getting back here. Like, because these guys were so big in front of me, but people don't understand. Like you'd literally run that risk every time you drive down the highway.
Yeah. So there was one time I did a show down in Lethbridge, and I remember Randy got hurt. So I think it was one of the times he blew out his ankle. Oh. And he was hurt. I'd driven one of the cars down there. So Mike, Chucky and I decided we were going to leave early and take Randy back. And I was, 17 or whatever. And we just started making these trips down to Lethbridge. I didn't know my way anywhere. So, and we're not following the usual, parade of cars heading out of right. Lethbridge. So we hit the highway out of Lethbridge, and 2 hours later, we see that we're just about to pull into Crow's Nest Pass.
Oh, shoot.
For anyone who doesn't know their BC Alberta geography, that's due straight west from Lethbridge, whereas Calgary is just about straight north.
Yeah, you're now 2 extra hours farther from home.
Yeah, and wow. No, nobody's thrilled about this. We're now going to get home later than all the guys who left at the end of the show. Turn around in Crow's Nest Pass, and it's late. And we're trying to get back to Calgary, and it's the Crow's Nest Highway. It's one lane either direction, no shoulder, and
tons of wildlife.
Yeah, well, pitch dark. I've just got my headlights, and then I see a deer.
Right.
I full halfway across my lane. Oh, and like I'm a fairly new driver at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh no, swerve this way, and as I swerve that way, second deer.
Oh geez.
No, swerve back, pass between them. To this day, I don't know how my mirrors didn't clip these two deer. Wow. But Randy was in the passenger side. He said I missed it by about 3 inches. And I think my side was about that too.
Oh man.
Yeah, drove up, pulled over, and we pulled over, and all of us just lost it laughing for about 10 solid minutes because you don't know what else to do. You just
yeah, that adrenaline dump. People would never understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst thing I ever hit, well, I mean, not the worst, but probably the weirdest thing I ever hit. I hit an owl once.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I was leaving a town. I think it was Raymond, this little tiny town in southern Alberta. And I was driving down the road, and it's just dusk, right? Dead of summer. So it's like 10:30 at night, show's over. And I see what I think is like a 2x6 on the road. So I just put my center in the middle of, or my truck in the middle of the lane to go over the center of the 2x4 kind of thing. And sure enough, I get too close to react, and the owl turns its head. And I'm like, oh shit. And it takes off, and its wingspan, I was driving one of those little Bronco 2s, and its wingspan was as wide as the front of the truck, and wham, right in the center of the grill. And man, I felt terrible. And of course, I'm telling people like, "Oh, I hit an owl." They're like, they're endangered and give me all this shit. And it's like, it's not like I was hunting the owl. Like, what do you think? I left that town like I'm going to hit an owl with my truck today.
Yeah. If you have Randy or Vance Nevada on. I know one time also coming back from Lethbridge, they hit a deer that came right in the windshield, and they had to just pull it out, put it just to the side, and go on back to Calgary with no windshield on the car.
Jesus. That's hardcore.
Because it's one of those, you did the show at Lethbridge. They used to run Wednesday nights, so everybody had to work the next day.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Certainly
and that's the other thing a lot of people do.
To miss a day of work.
Yeah. And you know what, man? I remember when we started working for the Hearts, we had like 10 shows and 11 nights was our first little tour. And there are places reasonably close, Sylvan Lake, Red Deer, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat. And we were getting ready to quit our jobs because we were going to be wrestling so much. And Ross Hart told us flat out, like, do not quit your jobs yet. Like,
Ross is good.
Yeah, man. Ross, you know what? Ross is one of those guys. Him and I definitely had some disagreements on how we should handle our business once in a while. But overall, he's one of the best guys.
Yeah, I love Ross.
Yeah, and people don't, if you don't spend a lot of time talking to Ross, you would never know what an encyclopedia of wrestling he really is.
No, that's the thing. I remember, like, yeah, you don't hear about him as much. I think there's one documentary that I think it was Brett says, he used to be this little kid in the back in Stampede giving guys critique on their match. Like, the hell does this kid know? But then you listen to what he says and he's right.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I remember,
like, he's sharp, Ross.
Well, and he knows like more little high spots. Like if you can't come up with a spot or something in your match, Ross knows more little high spots and false finishes than anybody else I know. Like he has so much in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Roscoe.
Yeah, he's another, talk about just fun guys we were lucky to be able to get in there with, just because the scene at BJ's gym was what it was Ross would come by and train with us a little bit. There were times Brett came by, trained with us a little bit.
Right. Yeah, Ross is one of those guys. He made us do what we thought at the time was really weird shit. You know what I mean? Because having come up through amateur wrestling and stuff, you got most of your cardio through wrestling. Yeah, you did some sprints and some, we did a lot of plyometrics and things like that. But there was no like going to aerobics class, right? Where, Ross would make us meet down at BJ's gym at like 9:00 Saturday morning. We'd do aerobics for an hour and a half. Then we'd go up to the house to start training.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So he'd made us do, and at the time it was just like, Ross, why are you making us do this bullshit? Like, this is aerobics. This is for girls. And then you get in a match and all of a sudden you're 40 minutes in and you're not tired yet. And you realize, okay, that's why Ross makes us do the aerobics.
Yeah. I found so much just over the last few months when I've been kind of, okay, I've got to get myself back into wrestling shape and figuring out what I need, where I need to strengthen up and what I need to rebuild. And it all comes when I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to accomplish that? And it all comes back to like exercises we did in our workouts before training.
Yeah, all that basic shit, right? Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, core work.
Yeah.
It's when I'm coaching amateur wrestling, I don't do a lot of I make the kids get their cardio wrestling, as funny as it sounds. At the end, I make them do pyramids. I don't know if you know what those are, where you kind of run to one end of the mat and do 5 push-ups, run to the other mat, do 10, back, do 15, and do sit-ups and burpees. So I do that to blow them up at the end of a practice, but that's more of a mental toughness thing, that now that you're tired and worn out, let's do this thing and see if you can get through it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I always thought you get your cardio through the sport, but things have changed so much now. Like, I don't know how much UFC and shit like that you're watching, the way these guys train now as opposed to 30 years ago when I was younger. It's completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like I would puke doing one of these exercises now.
Yeah, that's been the most intimidating thing coming back, is like things have sped up a lot over the last 4 years.
Yeah, man.
Up to hang with these kids.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, you have it in you now. It's just a matter of banging the rust off, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've been lucky. We have a great school out here right now, the Lionsgate Dojo. That's run by head trainers Artemis Spencer, and then Nicole Matthews runs training there as well. Tony Baroni, Billy Swade, and then a few of the other talents from out here are in and out running classes now and then.
That sounds like that's a plethora of talent to learn from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been really lucky that's there, and I've been able to go and train with these guys. That was actually how my coming back to wrestling kind of came about. I was having the itch, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just go go to training, and I can hang around training. I can do the rolls and stuff with people. Maybe I can give a little bit of help here and there, or feel out what I can do what I can do, and then I'll go to shows and I'll talk to the people who are running the shows, and I'll just see how I can be of help.
Right.
How I can be productive being around, because I found one thing I hated was coming to the shows and being that like, oh, I'm just here visiting friends. Oh, excuse me, guys, you do your thing. I'll be over here waiting for you. Like that's I don't want to be in the back getting in people's way, but at the same time, like that's not me. Like I can't go there and be that guy. I gotta have something to contribute. And before I retired, I've been wrestling for 12 years. Like I'm sure somewhere I have something I can.
Yeah, somewhere someone's given me a nugget I can pass on to you if I have nothing on my own.
Yeah. So I started, just doing the warm-up drills with the guys, and then there'd be the odd cardio drill. I thought, well, the warm-up drills all feel fine. I'll do the cardio drills and do that. And then I went to my doctor and I said, I'm feeling pretty good. And at the same time, I was also working in construction, and like it's a work can be rough. There were times I'd been hit in the head by stuff, times I've stood up into things, like I'd accidentally knocked my head around enough to be like, I think it's okay.
That didn't hurt as bad as it should have.
Yeah. So my doctor said, well, it's all about recovery time and gradual return. So just don't push it. If you do push it and anything feels iffy at all, then take a few steps back. And so I was able to just kind of ease into things, and then I just found things felt okay. I said, well, I think I'm okay. So, so around that time, these gentlemen I'm working with now, there's Rob Fye is running this Nation Extreme Wrestling is the company I'm working for now. They have I need to get my plug in before.
Yeah, let's talk about
companies I don't work for. Don't get you guys to the show that I have coming up this weekend, September 11th. We've got 2 shows going on at the Gaming Stadium in Richmond. We've got the evening show at 7:00 is sold out. We've got an afternoon matinee that's been added as well at 2:00. There's still tickets available for that. And for everyone out there in Alberta who can't get out here to see the show, it's going to be offered streaming from nationextremewrestling.com starting on September 14th.
Nice. Okay, send me the links and I'll put them in the, I don't know how to do that shit, but send me the links and I'll put them in the bio below too.
Absolutely, I'll do that.
So look, somewhere down there, I'll have links.
Yeah. So Rob Fye he's a broadcaster out here. He's worked with the Vancouver Canadians, our semi-pro baseball team. He's working with the Fraser Valley Bandits basketball team. He's worked with ESPN. He's been around the broadcasting game here for a long time. He's found a partner who's experienced in the business side of sports, and they decided they were going to get into the wrestling game. And so I started chatting with those guys to keep up on what was going on and see where I could help. And they said they wanted to feature the Lionsgate Dojo and their trainees very heavily, and they needed some experienced guys to be in there with some of the newer guys and to names that are familiar to the audience as well. And so it happened to come up at the right time, and here I am making my return after 4 years this Saturday.
That's awesome, man. So obviously, like you say, you eased your way back into it. You're feeling pretty good. What are your family's thoughts on this? What are they, not to bring your wife, kids into this, but what are they thinking?
The kids are thrilled. They're really excited.
Right.
They haven't seen me wrestle before, so we'll see how they feel about it after they.
Yeah.
They're gonna be front row for the afternoon show coming up on Saturday, so we'll see what their impressions are after that. But my youngest wasn't born yet when I retired. Right. So they're really excited. I'm really excited for them to be able to see it. My wife has been really supportive. Some of my extended family are a little concerned, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah. Well, and it's fair. I mean, they understand when you've watched somebody recover from post-concussion syndrome. It can be a scary thing knowing they're back in a position, but I think I'm probably the same way, that after you kind of go through that and realize that what you've done, you're a lot more cautious, right? Like after 2014, nobody was ever allowed to hit me in the head with anything.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just grab this steel chair. Yeah, that's not a thing. Like, just get the hell out of it. You just kind of give up on that shit after a while, right?
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like I feel that I can still do it at the level that I used to do it with a little bit more concern for my own well-being.
Right. Yeah. Well,
so that's the game plan anyway.
no, and I mean, that's the thing is, I think as a mature, well, geez, I almost fell right out of my chair. As a mature worker, I think that you have two things to offer. First and foremost, you have the experience of how to entertain a crowd with sometimes, getting more with doing less, but also you yourself can extend your career by, kind of getting more with doing a little bit less. And I think that's an important thing to learn as you kind of get older. Cause, you said you were 27, you're what? So that makes you 31 now?
Yeah.
So that, to me, the way I look at it is you still have the last, to me, from 27 to 35 is the peak of your age. Sort of your peak physical condition is going to be in that time. So you still got, you're still in your prime.
Yeah, no, I feel that way. That was a big incentive to me to come back. It's like, I really it's one of those, like, if I'm healthy, I've got some good time left. Like,
you still got a good run left in you.
Yeah. So, if it was a case where, if I come back, I'll be back for, maybe a year, and then it's probably my time to ride off into the sunset anyway, then I'm not sure that it would have been worth it. But I think I still have a good run in me. I think I still have a lot to contribute. And I think I'm really excited to do it for the team that we have going out here right now.
Right.
Well, I'm really excited about the young talent that we have out here right now. There's some really, really talented young wrestlers coming in, and I say that. I mean, what I'm referring to as young wrestlers are a lot of guys who debuted about the time I left. So it's not like they've been in business for 5 years now. They know what they're doing. There's some phenomenally talented students out of the dojo, and I'm very excited about NEW's plans and the team that they have to execute them.
Right. Now, is this one of those things where this promotion there's a succession plan? We're going to start here. We're going to get TV. Or is it, we're going to start running and see what happens?
There's a little bit of, they've got a few steps laid out, and then see what happens.
Well, the fact that they're already streaming, says something.
Yeah, that was the thing. And the way the way everything's rolled out for this show, the marketing's been really impressive. I've been enjoying everything they've been doing there. I think they've done a great job of building demand and getting news of the show out there, providing opportunities for people to see it, and doing every flavor of ice cream, like we talk about with wrestling. This show there's a lot of different things going on. There's going to be something for everybody on it. And it's going to be presented in a way that I think is going to be really interesting to a lot of fans. Like I said, Rob's got a lot of experience with these semi-pro and professional sports broadcasters, and that's a lot of the feel that they want to bring to NEW.
Right.
So I think it's going to be really interesting for fans to watch.
Well, I think, I would be lying if I said I knew Rob's work, but I think when you have a guy with that level of experience, I think one thing that person will strive for right away is a very polished product. The production will look polished, which I think when you watch new shows begin, that's usually what's lacking and usually what kills them at the beginning. Even if they have a great roster of talent, if the production's dog shit, it's really hard to get out of the gates.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And at the same time, they've also been really receptive to wrestlers' input on the wrestling side of things, and understanding that, producing this polished product, marketing it, things like that are their areas of expertise, and taking advantage of what we know about the wrestling end of things.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of the things that I had Johnny Devine on a little while ago. One of the things he talked about, he's taken some production, post-secondary production schooling. And he was telling me, he started going on about the cuts the WWE makes, like when a guy's just about to hit a big move and they'll cut from one camera to the other. And you sort of miss the essence of the move. You sort of see them going into the move, and then you see them barely catch the impact of the move.
Yeah.
And the whole thing gets lost in that cut. And the more I've watched it now, it bothers the shit out of me. So hopefully these are the things that this guy is looking at too,
Yeah, I hope so too. That's been the cuts on WWE programming been driving me nuts for a while. It might my sensitivity to vertigo and things like that, where I'm like, man, I cannot handle like 7.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was something I didn't really notice because I didn't know.
Please.
Yeah, like there doesn't have to be a cut every single time the guy changes position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now are these guys, are they a single camera show? Do you know? Is it going to be, hard cams on the floor?
No, we're going to have hard cam, Roman cams. I believe they're going to have three cameras running on the wrestling. They're going to have a full broadcast team going live, doing commentary. We've got Chantel is running the backstage interviews. She's got a similar background to Rob. She's very experienced in this sort of thing.
Okay.
So we're going to have polished backstage interviews. cut in throughout the show, and it's going to be a really exciting, polished product. I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, is this what drew you back? Because you and I had exchanged a couple messages on Facebook before you got involved here, and you'd mentioned you might be interested in checking some stuff out, and I kind of warned you, like, be careful, if you go near it, you'll get sucked in. And sure enough,
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Start asking questions, seeing what you need. Oh, you need me? Okay.
Yeah. I think I could help you guys.
Yeah, I think I can dust off the old tights.
Well, and you know what's funny is when I was on Boris's podcast, he kind of mentioned, and it was something I felt bad about, but after I retired from wrestling, PWA wanted me to commit as the commissioner role. And I said I wouldn't. I was really gung-ho about it. And then it wasn't until kind of just before the first show I realized, like, I cannot go to the shows because I still felt okay. Like, you know, I'm very fortunate I got out of wrestling while the promoter still wanted me to come wrestle, the fans still wanted me to wrestle, and physically I could still wrestle. And so there was that part of me that knows, like, if I go to those shows, I'm going to start wrestling again. Like, this won't stick. So I had to stay away.
Yeah. I had a similar experience after I finished up in 2017. I came back and managed for a very short stint.
Right.
And it was the same thing. Well, I had two issues. One, that just being there, like you want to, and at that point, I absolutely couldn't.
Right.
Like, I knew I couldn't. And as a manager, I couldn't get hit. I couldn't get bumped. I couldn't get physical in any kind of way. And I just thought, I don't want to go out.
It's just not the same.
Past version of anything. Like, if there's something that I can go out and I can sink my teeth into, I can invest myself into, and I can do a good job at, then great. I want to contribute. But if it's just a charity spot, then give it to somebody who can give more.
Well, and that's kind of how I feel too. Like, one of the reasons I packed it in is there's always a hungry guy looking for a spot on the roster. And I'm not like, do I want to put on a good show and take pride in what I'm doing? 100%. But it's not like I'm out there making tapes, trying to get booked elsewhere. So there's probably looks and thinks, yeah, I know that Kurt still wants me here. I know that some of the guys on the roster still want me here, but at the same time, I know there's a hungry guy that needs this spot so he can try and get to the next level. Right. That's how I looked at it. But to me, when I look at a guy like you coming back at 31, man, you still, if what you're doing now is all you ever do, that's still amazing. But you still have enough time, and you're still young enough and still have enough ability to move to the next level if that's what you're so inclined to do.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where that goes, but I'm certainly excited to be in a position to contribute to the scene here. The big part of the reason I moved out here, big part of the reason I started coming out here to wrestle all the time was that I love the talent in the scene and the work rate out here, and not to slight anybody else. I just felt.
But when you guys left here, I'll be one of the first people to say it was a tough climate to work in. Do you know what I mean? Like, things had become a little bit different in that. PWA locker room was not the same when I kind of came back around 2011 as it was when I left previously.
It was definitely a different vibe than what we came up in.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, and I remember kind of coming back, and it was sort of like, oh shit, like, what's going on in here? And it was one of those, I came back for 3 shows, or was booked for 3 shows in 2011 just to get through the, I want to say 10th anniversary show it would have been then. And all of a sudden, whoever was doing the booking had booked me through to like Christmas time without actually speaking to me. And when I sort of realized what was going on in the locker room and shit like that, I was like, yeah, no, I think I'm out of here in 3 shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I told Kurt flat out, I said, call me when the book changes, call me. Right. Like and then 2 years later, the book changed. He called me and I went back.
Oh, there you go.
It was, well, and I mean, it was a fun run because I got to work with, when I left, it was sort of like the same thing you're saying now. When I left, the Michael Richard Blazes were just, he was still Chucky, coming up the ranks and, I mean, getting good. But by the time I came back, he'd had 5 years, 4 years of polish and was at the top of the roster and damn well deserved to be there. So it was very cool to see that when I came back.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So first show this Saturday, September 11th.
That's right.
Let's run all these details again.
We got 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. 2 p.m. show still has tickets available at nationextremewrestling.com. And then it's all going to go up streaming from nationextremewrestling.com starting on September the 14th. Okay.
And where can the fans follow you at?
I am at Plexis Wrestling on whatever social media platform you prefer. I've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm working on getting a YouTube and or a TikTok going as well, but the handle is always going to be Plexis Wrestling.
Right on, right on. All right, folks on the Lower Mainland, make sure you check out National Extreme Wrestling. Please give my man at Plexis, Alex Plexis, a follow. One of the nicest, classiest young guys I've ever met in this business. It's such a pleasure, man, to see where you started as this, this 15-year-old kid in the Stampede locker room to the young man and the father you are today, man. I'm so proud. Not that it's my place to be, but I'm really proud of the young man you are, brother. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute blast. It was great to catch up with you.
Oh, man, I look forward to do it again after the show. Let's do a follow-up and really pump the shit out of this thing.
For sure. Let's do it.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you very soon. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!